Scale, Exit, Repeat, the complete entrepreneur edition. Today, we're talking about facing your startup fears. Is this something that you've been thinking about? Is there an idea? Is there a concept that you want to launch, but you're too nervous to do that? You're too afraid to get that product to market. Well, that's what we're talking about today on The Complete Entrepreneur. We do this every Thursday at 5 o'clock Eastern, and you're actually listening to a live show. If you're listening to the podcast or on YouTube, you might not know this, but we're actually a live show, and we do it every Thursday, 5 o'clock Eastern, with my co-host, Michael Gilmore. And today we're talking about facing your startup fears, something that is, every one of us goes through. And I'll tell you now, I've been a serial entrepreneur now for 30 years, and I've done dozens of companies. And every time I go into another company, there's always that fear. There's the fear, the leap, the jump. Think of it, it's almost like jumping before you dive into a pool. It's just something that you think about before you make the move. Do you do it or don't you do it? And that's the question we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the emotional strain, the challenges, the fear of failure, or maybe even the fear of success, because that's what this is all about. This is something that's real, and every single person who's an entrepreneur will relate to the fact that, there are fears that do exist within all of us. And if we do this, we're going to lose everything we own. If we do this, we're going to be embarrassed by everybody we know. And if obviously we fail. If we do this, we're going to experience stress that we don't we would not be comfortable with. Whatever the fears are, whatever's holding you back, that's what we're going to talk about today. Michael Gilmore is our host. He's coming in from live from Australia. Michael, nice to see you back again. What do you
Oh,
think
and it's
about this
great to
topic?
be. Can I just say, Colin, it's great to be here. It's 2025, and I couldn't have picked a better topic than the one that's here, which is facing your startup fears. What a great topic! Like it's one of the most debilitating thing for an entrepreneur is facing their fears, because there's the fear of what happens if it goes wrong. There's all the financial fears, but there's also the reputational fears. What happens if I fail? What happens if I fail? What occurs if I fail? What do people think of me? What do my family think of me? What do my wider family think of me? What do my friends think of me? Yeah, that I failed, and so that's all there is to it. And what does failure actually look like? Is failure suddenly I don't have my house anymore because I put that on the line? Is what does failure actually look like? And what happens after failure? Yeah, there's all these different things, and they can be really debilitating, Colin, and really challenging. And how, as entrepreneurs, can we master our fears, but be aware they're there, but master them so they don't master us? I think that's the real question at stake. Is that because to ignore your fears is stupid, if you ask me, is irresponsible in many respects. But to recognize that you have a fearful situation, because it could be a financial fear as an example, but then as an entrepreneur, you mitigate that fear by putting certain things in place. And I know, Colin, you've been a real fan of like stage gates of, okay, we'll continue if we meet this stage gate. We'll continue if we meet this stage gate, and so forth like that. They're like the stage gates of the old racing car games. If you get there, you get some more time. You get to this point, you get some more time on the racing car games. So some very similar concept. Is that the methodology to mitigate that fear?
It
But
is one of them we talk, Michael, in the book. It is
yeah,
one of them we talk
yeah,
about. We talk about this idea of a stage gate. It's a SMART goal: specific,
yeah,
measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. And it's particular time in the future you say, okay, I'm going to set aside, let's say I'm going to set aside $20,000. I'm going to have an MVP within 90 days. If I don't have it within 90 days, this MVP, I'm going to pivot or kill it. Or I'm going to have 10 customers within 6 months, or I'm going to have 100 distribution channels, with it, whatever the goal is, we want to set that in advance. And then we want to give ourselves the option to not be stressed out about it, to say, okay, I know I now have 6 months. I know what I need to achieve. Now let me focus on that. And then when you get the naysayers around you, and trust me, they're around you. Right. I remember graduating from college, Michael, and the first thing I said was like, "Oh, I'm gonna start a business." And like, "Are you crazy? Are you crazy? You could be making so much more money being a lawyer and or being an accountant or doing that." I said, "Well, I just don't want. I don't enjoy that." And ironically, my first business was flogging vegetables. You probably don't know that, Michael, but working
Yeah,
on a
yeah.
farm, flogging vegetables. So it was not an easy business, and definitely not that, not that, not that profitable either. But the reality was, I enjoyed it, and I worked very hard at it, and I made my own money, and I used that money to start the next business, and so forth and so forth. But dealing with this fear, Michael, like I'll tell you, it doesn't go away. Like after 30 years, it doesn't go away. Like when I wrote the book, Start, Scale, Exit, Repeat, my biggest fear was like, here I spent like 10 years writing a book, and I'm going to put it out there. It's going to be a piece of, no, I think it's great. Personally, the book is great. But things go happen in your mind. Your mind starts telling you, oh, maybe people won't think it's very good, right? Maybe they'll call it like, oh, this is not a very good book. Oh, this is not very whatever. And then you start going through all these gyrations in your mind of how things could go wrong, and you'll be embarrassed. And everybody in the community and quite well known in the entrepreneur community would think, oh, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. Oh, he's a horrible writer. Oh, he's this, he's that, and just all that negativity, the fear of that reputational loss from putting out the book. Now, as you know, the book that won 23 global awards and 15 number one best-selling spots on Amazon. Everything. It became a big success. But and by the way, don't tell my English teacher in college that, because I obviously didn't do very well in English or writing. And I did have a few good complaints about my style. My style is a little bit street language, we'll call it that. But that's okay. It's authentic. It was not written with AI. It was written with a human, and just it really is something. But I was so fearful that I would put this out there and I would fail. But in my mind, I said, you know what I can do? I can only do my best. And I put my best into it. I know I did. 10 years, 200 interviews. Like we put our absolute best into this. And if I did that and I only have one person who reads it, then I only have one person who reads it. If I have one person who takes something from it, then one person took something from it. And then I changed the world in one small way. I don't need to have a million books sold to be successful. Now, don't get me wrong, I'd like that, and we're heading that direction, but that was how I talked to myself at the time, how I told myself that, it really doesn't matter if a million people don't like it. It's whether or not one or two people like it, or one or five people, or 10 people take from it. And by the way, I even put at the very end of the book, the very last line of the acknowledgments, I said, "It is my hope that one day that my daughter and my son will read this book and learn from it what I have learned from all the people
Mm.
who did interviews in this book." And
Yeah,
so that's what I'm
that's
talking
important.
about. Like it's I came to a point in my mind that I said, this isn't for fame, this isn't for money, this isn't for anything else. This particular book, this project, and I'm not saying every business or project you launch, there's a different thing, but this particular book, I did it because I wanted to help some people. And if the people choose to listen, if people want to look at it, if they want to read the book, they want to help themselves out to start, scale, exit, repeat. Those are the people who I wrote the book for. I didn't write the book for the naysayers. I didn't write the book for those who well, yeah, I just want to get rich quick and $1 million weekend and blah blah blah. That's not the book for them. I even wrote that at the beginning of the book. This is not the book for get rich quick. This is the book for building a strong foundation and a career and a trade and entrepreneurship, a trade of entrepreneurship. But anyway, we won't digress on that. But point is, I was fearful, Michael. Here's a guy, he's 30-year career, he's built almost, 15 multi-million dollar companies. And I'm like, I'm paranoid, I'm nervous, I'm afraid of my reputation when this book comes out.
It's
And I know
it's
you've been there too, Michael. Tell me, I want to hear
yeah,
a
yeah. It's
personal story
interesting.
here. I want to hear your personal story recently
Yeah,
of something that you feared when you were launching this. I want to hear from you because
yeah.
let's.
It's an interesting thing. Yeah, like I wrote a book as well. I wrote a science fiction book, and people would say, "Well, aren't you worried that you may get some bad reviews and everything like that?" Or like, or they asked the question initially, why did you write this?" And I said to them, because I wanted to find out what happened next. So I wrote it for me. I did a market research of one, is that I wrote it for me. And it was a way for me overcoming some of that fear, which is in the end, I did not care what other people thought. The thing that was most important was what I thought. And it's the same thing in business. In when you look at business, why do you start it? Is it for the monetary gain, or is there something more innate inside of you which is driving you along? And I look at my own journey, even across the last like 18 months. The last 18 months have been quite tumultuous, sort of ups and downs, highs and lows in business for me. And like I ended up buying out my business partner of 17 years, and which cost millions of dollars to do so, and the beginning of 2024. And I knew I was going to a difficult year, and you're sort of stumping up a whole lot of cash.
Did you not fear like you're gonna like what if things go wrong? I lose my house, my I lose everything I've worked for my entire life by doing this? Was that one
Yeah,
of those moments?
for me is it could have been that. Like as part of the negotiation was basically, okay, you got to put your house on the line. And I just said in the negotiation, no, that's just not an option. And it's not an option. I'm not doing that. And so it creates some boundaries for the negotiation. There's to me, there's places you should go and places you should not go. And well, that's what's the saying is, don't go where angels fear to tread. And that is one of them. So I made that decision, Colin, that no, I'm not putting that in line. But it's still fearful because you still have an obligation there. So I end up doing a crazy situation, buying out my business partner. If he took a whole heap of cash off the table immediately, and I had to pay a whole heap of money to him, which is cash that I had, cash reserves and everything I personally had. And then there was a bit of an earn out as well. And so you're always concerned that, well, concerned, fearful that what happens if you just can't make it? What happens if all the work that he was doing is now on my plate as well? What happens if I I just don't have the capacity to do everything? There's all these questions go through your mind, and what happens if it fails? Like I knew I was going into a downturn. 2024 was the worst time of year for the industry, and and I could see that ahead of me, and I had to take that into consideration. And is this a place I wanted to go to buy him out at that particular point in time? And it was. I always think that the entrepreneurs, like a lot of my friends, they say to me, Michael, you're such a risk taker. And my wife, one time, we were in a bunch of friends, and then one of them said, "You're such a risk taker," and she just started laughing. And they said, what are you laughing for?" And she said, "What you don't understand is the amount of effort Michael goes to mitigate risk and to reduce the level of fear." Yeah. And they said, "Well, what do you mean?" She said, "You wouldn't believe what he does." And she actually started to speak on my behalf. It was quite interesting watching your wife speak on your behalf amongst amongst friends. But it's so true. Knowing that the fear is there and then doing something about it, two separate stages. The problem is with entrepreneurs is if they go along, they see the fear and they get bound by the fear and they get sort of swallowed by the fear. And that's the big challenge. And that a lot of
It could be
entrepreneurs face.
debilitating, can it?
Oh, you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, you can't sleep. And that just makes it all worse, right? Because you
Isn't it
can't sleep.
hardest like at the beginning, like, we all go through that as, in our career many times over. thousands. I don't know how many nights I've had that 3 o'clock in the morning thing. But when you first start out, I don't know. I don't know. I didn't feel like when I first started out, if I failed, I just failed, and I didn't really lose anything 'cause I didn't have anything. I was pretty much broke. What could I
But you,
lose, right? But now it feels like when you start to build a little success, and then you're like, oh, should I do that? Like with you and your business idea there of buying out your partner and pretty much risking your entire, future retirement on this one move. You got a lot more to lose now than you did when you first started out. But I'm not diminishing that the fear when you do
yeah,
start a business, because if there is that's what I really thought this topic would be about more. It's like
yeah,
not about
it's
later your life fears, but really with the early fears and in those and how do you get over that? And let's yeah. And if you're in the
yeah.
audience, by the way, we'd love to have you up here.
We'd love to have you up here on stage. So just put your hand up and we'll get you up here. Anyway, you're listening to The Complete Entrepreneur, and it's where we begin to unpack what it means to live the life of an entrepreneur. And it's a great show. It happens at 5 p.m. Eastern Time each week, and we're discussing the topic of facing your startup fears. And it's interesting you bring that up, Colin, of when you're first starting up. Yeah, it's an interesting scenario when you're first starting up, and you basically look at your bank account and you say, okay, there's my startup capital, and you're planning on taking that big risk. And what I learned learned in the very early years of my entrepreneurial career, I was 16 years old, and I learned how to drive a spreadsheet like you wouldn't believe. I was 16-year-old, and I drove the spreadsheet. It was Lotus 123. In fact, there was another one before that I was working on called Multiplan. They're basically the same sort of thing. And the thing I discovered about driving a spreadsheet, Colin, is that I could put in my cash flow. I could say, this is how much money on my bank, this is how much money I'm prepared to risk, or whatever it is. And I can say, this is what I need to do so that I don't run out of money. If I do these things, then I'm not going to run out of money. And a lot of it back in those early days is all about your financial stress and your financial fears and what's going to happen if things go wrong and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, so I ended up driving that out, and by driving out those numbers, I began to work out where were those break points? What did I have to achieve, and was that believable? Is it believable? One of the biggest dangers a lot of entrepreneurs do, and is they end up drinking their own Kool-Aid. Is they believe that they're going to get that big massive deal. They believe that everything's going to be like unicorns and all that sort of stuff and fluffy white clouds. The reality is, when you launch a business, you've got a massive boulder you're putting your shoulder against, and you're trying to push it up a hill. That's what you're trying to do. And it's just bloody hard work, to be quite blunt with you. It is so hard. And you suddenly think, oh, it's so hard to get that first client on board, so hard to get that first dollar of revenue actually in the bank account. And then the government comes along and says, I'd like a chunk of that, thank you. And you say, well, what do you do? No, you've got to do that, otherwise you go to jail. So you better make sure you keep all your books in order and all that sort of stuff. And then there's so many things you end up having to do, because as the entrepreneur, you're the jack of all trades, the master of none. And
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
yeah,
Uh,
it is really, it's a really tough journey, Colin, at the very
no, I understand.
beginning.
So, Michael, let's
So,
just
so
keep try to stay on track, though. We got to do taxes now. Like, let's not go there. Let's try to stay
yeah,
on track. I am here to keep you on
yeah.
track. I
So
want to.
I'm talking about the
Okay.
fear side of it. So the thing I discovered as a 16-year-old, and that was 16-year-old. My gosh, that's 33 years ago, or just about for me. The thing I discovered was that I could put my fears into a spreadsheet and to determine whether they were real fears or they were just in my mind. And I could then go along and change different parameters and that sort of stuff. And it cost me nothing but actually just sitting down and just doing it. It cost me nothing. I haven't spent a penny yet. I can just put it in there. And that, what it did was, And I said this to my kids as they were growing up. I said, "You know what a budget is?" And they said, "Yeah, we've heard about the budget." And I taught them how to budget and all that sort of stuff. I said, "A budget is something that tells you what you can do." I said, "It's very liberating, a budget." Because if you're getting this much money in and you're spending this much money and you want to go on a vacation in May, then you can say, I've allocated that money. I can have a great time on a vacation and I'm still saving, say, to buy a house or whatever or your dream is you want to do. And I said, it's very liberating. So it mitigates a lot of the fears, Colin, I found anyway. And by mitigating those fears, those financial fears, became it became it was like a load went off my back. I said, okay, so all I've got to do is talk to X number of clients per day, get this number of clients on board for this sort of value. And if I keep on doing that, and I do that for the first 3 months, then I'm going to be profitable. So all I've got to do is work how to do that better. And that's what I went and did, Colin. And I've started many businesses. Um, and it was along the way, and it's the same sort of thing over and over again, and you just learn how to do that better. And and the other thing I found is, as you get older in life, that you end up developing really good key relationships you can really rely on. And one of the things that I've also done is to help mitigate fears is have people that I can share ideas with. I always find these entrepreneurs who say, "Oh, I don't want to share my idea because you may steal it," or something like that. I think, I just then don't talk to that person. Go to someone who's going to be honorable. Okay, just don't talk to that person, but
Like the
share with.
Winklevoss twins, right? Like the
Oh
Winklevoss
my
twins
God.
with Facebook and
Oh, yeah,
yeah.
it's just, oh, you're gonna steal my idea. I said, well, just don't talk to them, but you need to talk to someone. You need to get some third party verification. Like that nowadays, Collins, be quite blunt with you. The cost of starting a business nowadays is so low. It really is so low. You get these people that go along and say, well, I've got to go along and have stock and everything like that. So I've got to instantaneously go and get, like, I have to spend $30,000 to go along and have stock. And I'm going to, then once I got the stock, then I can sell it. I'm thinking, are you just stark raving mad? Set up a website, put a thing on there. Hey, we're looking at launching this product. Here's all the information about this product. If you're interested in it, then please leave your details here and we'll come back to you when we're ready to launch. And you just put it there and see what happens. And if you suddenly get 1,000 people say, "I want your product," guess what? That's pretty good
And I like
indication
that
that
because you're
you're
saying
on a winner
there's
there.
ways to sort of walk before you run, right? You don't have to,
It
you don't
doesn't
have to
cost you a
necessarily
thing.
throw everything out there, right?
Yeah,
Let me tell you like one other early thought I have. And no, I know we have GK on board here, but let me just tell you one
yeah,
other. When I was early years here, back in graduating from college, I remember writing my mother a letter, and she's a farmer by trade, and I put myself through
yeah,
university, and I just said I just want to start a business. And there was a lot of disappointment that I wasn't becoming a lawyer. And
yeah.
I know when I was dating my girlfriend at the time was now my wife, and was like her father was like very, she was an accountant by trade, vice president, CFO. Oh no, this is very bad to have an entrepreneur like as a in the family and all this stuff like but I sort of accepted that one. But I remember writing this letter to my mother, and I said that, look, I know this is not maybe what you wanted from me. You wanted me to become a lawyer. You want to become somebody who's a successful professional. And I think this is not just me. I think there's a lot of people who go through this. But I just know who I am, and I really believe that I want to give this a try. I want to make this a business try, and I launched in that direction. And thankfully it lasted, but it only lasted for 14 months, and we ended up having to shut the business down due to change in regulation. But we managed to monetize and do the next one, and then it's a history from there. But the fact of the matter is that letting your parents down after all the college education, after everything, by becoming an entrepreneur. And I know this sounds odd, but I felt fearful of failure of failing in front of my mother. My father had passed away a few years earlier, and then here I am working on the farm after graduating from college, working with her and working at selling vegetables and stuff. But I just really
Yeah,
had that. I really wanted to
yeah.
do it, and it felt bad that I had to write a letter. I couldn't even verbally explain it to her that I was potentially I want to give this a try. Because
It,
this idea that you're going to
yeah.
fear, your parents put so much in you, and then you're going to fear failure. It's there too. It's all over. Like, this is not just your friends. It's also your parents. It's your family. It's your livelihood. It's a lot of things. There's a lot of
It's
reasons not to do this, and there's a lot of
it's
benefits
interesting
from
you
it.
say that, Colin. Yeah, it's interesting you say that. Like, I was an entrepreneur for a while, 10 years or so, or something like that. And my dad comes to me and he offers me a job on a salary. And it was really good. It was a great offer. He said, "I'd love to have you come and we can work together and all that sort of stuff." And it was a good deal. And and I had to go. I went back to him. I said, "I think you need to understand is I'm terrified." And I was really fearful. And he said, "Oh, is it not enough?" I said, "No, you need to understand, I've never had a regular income in my life. And what you're offering is security and safety. And I don't understand that." And so it became a flip side thing for me, which was, and in the end, I said, "No, I can't do this." Because I said to him, "The thing you need to understand is that the way I am built is that to have someone say to me, and even as loving as my father say to me, 'Hey, you know what? You're going to get paid $1,000 a week, or whatever the number is, $1,000 a week, and whether you work really hard or not, that's how much you get paid. You're going to get paid $1,000 a week, right? Right. There may be some bonus or something like that, or whatever. Okay, but it's really that you're on a fixed income." I said, "I've never experienced it. I'm an entrepreneur. I eat what I kill, and that's just the way I am." And I think that all entrepreneurs, Colin, need to look inside themselves and say, "Are you the prey or the hunter?" And I'm the hunter. I really am. I'm not.
I
I'm
think it's
not
a
the
lot easier
prey.
being the prey. It's easier
Yeah,
being the
well,
prey.
absolutely it is. It's easier being the prey. Yeah, you're part of the herd and all that sort of stuff, and there's safety in the herd, and you just go where the herd says and everything, and you turn up, and the herd boss says to you, "This is what you need to do," and you go ahead and do it, and like it's so easy. It really is. Versus the hunter is scoping, not necessarily going to take out the herd, but they're trying to go along and find what is the thing that I need to be doing for that next dollar. How can I secure that next deal? Like, what am I going to do? How do we pivot? How do we do this? That's who I am, and I came to a recognition in my early 20s that that's the nature of Michael. So you can go along and put a lambskin across this wolf, but I'm still a wolf. That's what I am. And it's okay to be lamb. We need lambs, by the way. Like, not everyone's going to be a wolf. That'd be terrible. But yeah, I'm a wolf. I look at something, and people say to me, "You look at problems, Michael, in a very different way." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You seem to just either blast straight through it or go around or go under it, whatever that problem is. And you get around the fear of that failure." And I said, "Yeah, because I'm a wolf. Yeah, I'm not a sheep. Yeah, and that's just who I am. That's my nature. So don't I'm not going to change me." And maybe that's what it is, Colin, for
I know
the
wolves can be afraid as well, right?
oh yeah, no, look, wolves can go hungry. Trust me, wolves can go very hungry. Like, there's been some times in my life, Colin, where it's been really, really tough. I went from being a hero with tens of millions of dollars, right? I think it was close to $30 million personally, From literally one day to the next, I went to be that from to minus a lot. I'll leave it as that. One day to the next in a business, and that was an educational experience, put it that way, and for no fault of my own. I went from hero to zero, and a lot of the fears of what do people think of me came to the forefront. What does my wife think of me? What do my kids think of me? What does my mum and dad think of me? I went from hero to zero, one day to the next. Got My business got caught up in the machinations and the takeover of two multinational organizations, and I got shafted for millions and millions of dollars, and I had to close everything down. And it was a horrific experience. And a lot of the fears you're talking about, Colin, really came to the forefront of my thinking. And I used to have this picture in my mind of I would, as I started each day going through this whole excruciating journey, like literally it was from one day to the next. One day I was like, everything's going so good. We're meeting targets. We're doing this. We're doing that. And the next day it was bang, complete disaster. And I just picture my mind of climbing into a battle tank and pulling the lid shut and sort of like trundling down the road still, and hopefully I can survive. I remember I used to go up the elevator to my office, and I put my head down. It'd be like 6 in the morning, I'd be starting. I put my head down and I'd say, into the breach I now come. That was my mantra. In other words, the breach of the gun. And it was just uh, chaos and turmoil, internal turmoil and fear and all that sort of stuff. It was nuts. Yeah.
So, Michael, I think can you see GK on the stage? I can't. I don't know if you can or
Oh, I
not.
could just see him. I just saw G. I could just see G there. So, G, we'd love to get your thoughts on this, G. Like we've Colin and I got some great stories, but we'd love to get your perspective on this. So, about facing your startup fears. Over to you, G. Hello there, G. You there? Colin looks like he's not there.
Guess we're having technical problems. Yeah.
G,
GK.
the
Oh, here he goes.
GK.
Michael. He's saying, Michael, I admire your motivational speech,
Yeah.
but we also need points to survive in business after startup and unique ideas. So, GK, you're on stage. Do you want to just sort of explain that a little bit better? I know you could say that nicely in on the chat there, but if it's on your lower right, you can talk to us and actually express that a little bit more direct. But I'm with you. Like, when you actually get out there and you start your business concept, it doesn't mean you're successful. Even if you hit your first stage gate, even if you hit your first thing, you still got to get business. And there's this fear that you're not going to make payroll. There's a fear that you're not going to make the next sale. There's a fear that the product's not going to, come out in time or whatever it is. And how we deal with the day-to-day fears, I guess that's sort of the question GK is asking, Michael. What are you thinking?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Yeah, yeah. When I take a look at my own entrepreneurial journey, I put in things constantly for mitigating some of those issues that you just raised in, like things like meeting payroll and all that sort of stuff. To me, when you're employing someone, I find that's very, very serious. And how can I put this? One of the things that I endeavor to do is making sure that I do not spend all my money and reinvest all my money back into the business. What I do is I build up a cash reserve. And I build up a cash reserve to take some of that pressure off me, but also to give confidence to my team. And I'm very upfront with them about this. I say, look, we'll build up a cash reserve. So if some disaster happens, we've got like 6 months to something like that to sort things out, and then we can to pivot or do whatever we need to do. But it gives them security by having that cash reserve. So I see a lot of entrepreneurs that I think they do some very silly things, such as they spend every dollar that they earn, and by doing that, they say, "Oh, I'm reinvesting." I said, "Yeah, that's great, but you know what? as soon as you're taking on other people, you're taking on an obligation not just to that person. It's almost like you're taking on a pseudo obligation to their family, to the kids, and that sort of stuff, and everything. And so that's a very serious thing to do. So maybe it's better not to spend every single penny on growth and going complete nuts, but just take the foot a little bit off the accelerator. And by taking your foot off the accelerator just a little bit, you can begin to build that cash reserve. And I personally, Colin, I don't know about you, but in your businesses and that sort of stuff, but that's my approach. I try to build a cash reserve. I know when I play computer games, as an
I
example,
feel like Michael, like you're right. You've sort of solved the problem, and we're getting to that point now. Is what
yeah,
how do you address the peers? And I like the idea of a cash reserve. But let's also talk about a couple other things. We talked another one was setting a stage gate, a specific
yeah,
point in time in the future where you say, I'm going to
very
either
much
hit
so.
this or not hit this. I'm going to pivot or kill it, but I'm going to give myself the opportunity to get to this particular stage gate.
Can
I
I just
think
say about
another
stage
way,
gates? Here,
before you
just
go on,
before you go on from
yeah,
stage
okay, go.
gates. Yeah, the problem with stage gates is this, is when the entrepreneur gets this stage gate and they almost get it. When they almost get it, they don't follow through on their decision. Okay, I'm going to kill it. Or it's like, oh yeah, I'm almost there. I just need to get this great big deal on across the line.
So we need to
That's
pivot.
the
Or we need
Yeah,
to
well, that's
reflect it and
exactly
say,
right.
why didn't we hit it? Why didn't we hit it? Why did we think 4 months ago that this was the goal and that we are going to hit it and we didn't hit it right now? Okay, we're
Yeah,
99% there, but that's okay.
yeah,
Like you
but
can be, it's not
it's not
obviously,
the 99% though, Colin. It's the 80%. I'm 80% there. I just need a little bit more time or something like that. And I just need to put my hand in my pocket or extend my credit cards out a little bit more, and everything will be fine.
then
That's the problem.
reset your stage gate.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
But if you
but
do it, if you
you've
fail
seen entrepreneurs
twice
do
or
this.
three
You've
times,
seen entrepreneurs do this, and
I agree.
they
I
keep on
agree.
resetting. They keep on
I
resetting
agree.
the stage gate continuously, and they just get themselves into a bigger and bigger hole.
I agree. No, I see what you're saying. I see where you're coming with this. It
Yeah.
does happen. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's and the reason why they do it, it's almost like entrepreneurs at their core. I think the biggest fear for every entrepreneur should be the fact that they're an optimist. They should be afraid of the level of optimism they have, because that's the thing that's going to go and torpedo you. You need to go along, harness your optimism, but you need to be afraid that it may be taking you places you shouldn't go. And that's a very unusual thing I'm saying there, because the problem I see is that if you're always optimistic, you'll always believe you're going to get that great big deal. I've seen it. I've seen it so many times in entrepreneurs. They talk about, we've got this $1 million deal. I had this meeting and it was just awesome and everything like that. Trust me, if someone's paying $1 million and they say to you, oh yeah, get back to me next week, it doesn't mean they're going to give you $1 million next week. It's probably going to take another 6 months to get that deal across the line, the money in the bank account. Yeah, so it's tough. It's tough. So you need to harness your optimism, but don't be controlled by your optimism.
So one of
Yeah.
other ways to deal with fear is a community and joining an incubator, getting involved
Oh,
in,
heck yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely.
getting involved. So we have like one in South Florida called the Alan Levan Center, and they have an incubator program. It's free. They have an accelerate program. They have an ideate program. I do the first session of the incubator program with a group of people, of entrepreneurs. And when you start to get other people to help you, you can increase your chances of success. Bridget Weston, who runs the organization called SCORE, we interviewed her here, and you can actually Google it or look on startup.club if you want to see the show. We interviewed her on this show, and she has 10,000 volunteers. She runs the SCORE, which is sort of managed, I guess, funded by the SBA, Small Business Administration in the United States. And she actually says that you can increase your chances of success by 3 times by having a mentor. And there's a lot of volunteer mentors, 10,000 volunteer mentors. So that's another way of sort of addressing that fear is getting help and asking for people for help. And coming to shows like this and learning from others and asking others. But I really do encourage entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs, to get out of the garage and get into an incubator, because this is not the day and age of jobs in the garage. This is the day and age of it takes a community to build a startup. It really does. And you need to have people around you to help alleviate those fears, to help guide you and help agree with you or disagree with you in certain ways as well. And when you do that, it's an easier journey. When you're alone, it's a lot more fearful.
The other thing I found when I reflect on sort of my journey, Colin, is that one of the things I ended up doing was I got a bunch of happened to be guys, didn't, but it could have been some girls there too. But guys, we used to get together every week and we talk about our business. And then they would ask the question of you, if it was your turn, say, okay, so what are you going to achieve this coming week? And you say, oh, I'm going to be doing this, this, this. And when you rolled up to the meeting the following week, you're held accountable to what you said. You're absolutely held accountable to it. They say, so what did you say you do last week? I said, I'll do this. So why didn't you do it this week? And you say, well, I didn't do it because of this happened, that happened, or whatever. Not good enough answer. And they were drilling like you wouldn't believe. So with the result, you learned very quickly that whatever happened, you were going to deliver what you said you'd deliver. And each one of those businesses massively went forward. They did absolutely fired forward. And that was really good. So this is sort of what you're talking about in some ways as well, Colin, is the accountability, is that you're saying to some people, I respect you enough that I will allow you to speak into my life and hold me accountable. And this is to what I say will do. And this will help mitigate a lot of the fears. It'll help mitigate a lot of my over enthusiasm and over optimism and all that sort of stuff. And it'll keep me on track to my stage gates. And it worked for me. It really worked. There's not a chance I would turn up to one of those meetings without having done what I said I would do. There's not a chance. After you went through the first grilling, you never wanted to go through another one. I can tell you that right now. It was the best thing I ever did. It was just awesome. Yeah. So, Colin, there's that's all.
I can see Jerry L. Campbell there talking about SCORE on the chat. Says it is
Yeah,
an awesome organization, and she says also accountability is often the missing key. I'd
yeah,
like to hear
I
if
agree.
Jerry, if you want to come on stage, feel free to raise your hand. I don't want to put you on the spot. Don't you be fearful of coming on talking, but we'd love to hear from you. Is it like, yeah, it's really, I don't know. What do you think, Michael?
Yeah, look, it's being an entrepreneur is a journey. Understand that. And you'll have some highs, you'll have some lows. And during those lows, fear will come knocking at your door. During the highs, you're thinking you're going to be Superman. And don't forget that Superman has kryptonite as well. And kryptonite is going to take Superman out. Right. And that you need your Jimmy Olsons and you need your Lois Lanes and everything like that around you to be able to sort of like, "Oh, it's okay, Clark or Superman, we'll get rid of the kryptonite for you." You need a good team of people. And that team of people could be your accountant. That team of people could include your lawyer. That team of people could be an entrepreneurial organization. It could be people that hold you accountable, and they're going to look after you during those times because in the highs you're Superman, but by the way, also in the lows you're still Superman. You just feel like you got a piece of kryptonite sitting on your chest. That's all, and you just need to talk to someone. And one of the most horrible stats I think you've quoted, Colin, is the when the research done on entrepreneurs, the number of them that have mental issues or the number that commit suicide and things like that, because their fear just completely destroys them. And that is, if you're in that position right now and you're in the audience or listening to this podcast, let me tell you, you need to speak to someone. Nothing is worth your life. Nothing is worth your life. No sum of money is worth your life. And for those people out there, I know the laws in Australia are basically you can go bankrupt, and then you know what? You're able to have a fresh start. You're able to have a fresh start. So even if you think doom is upon you, the laws of the land allow you to have a fresh start. So the
Spe-
worst case scenario, you get to do it again. Mhm. Sorry, Colin. Sorry, you there? I'm not hearing you, Colin. Yeah, I'm not hearing you at all, Colin. I don't know whether is it my end or your end. Yeah. Anyway, I'll just assume it's not my end.
Yeah, a little technical difficulty there.
Yes.
Little
Okay. Oh, there you are. You're
technical
come back.
difficulty. I
Yeah.
just switched my decided our Wi-Fi just went down at the house here, but I know Jerry, you're trying to get on stage. We're trying to get you on stage. I don't know what's going on with the app again. So
Let me see if I can
can't
add.
figure out why we can't get her. I tried adding her. She couldn't. Doesn't seem to be able to get on stage.
Yeah.
You're talking about, a friend of mine who a year ago, I guess now, who on Friday laid off 100 employees, and on Tuesday he lost his life to suicide. And his
Yeah. That's
whole
just horrendous.
when the celebration of life, his whole thing was he just didn't want to go back. That was his identity. That was who he was. But your identity is not one company. You are an entrepreneur. That is your trade. And
Yeah.
failure is really a bump in the road. It really is a learning lesson. It really is something that we all can do to help hone our skills going forward. And
Colin, I go
it
further
is
than
how
that.
you
The
characterize it.
failure.
I really believe that it's how you characterize it within your mind.
Yeah.
And fear is not something that we should all hide from. It's not something we should run from. It's something we should embrace and be aware of and acknowledge, but understand how to deal with each component of that fear. And when we have these tools in place, whether it's stage gate, whether it's talking with a mentor at SCORE, whether it's working through this with our spouse or having an understanding family around us, whatever it is, we do need to deal with these fears. And when we do, I believe that we can get over them. I believe that they are a challenge. I believe it's a mental block why most people don't run a business, why most people never start, why most people who have an idea never actually take it to action. Well, what I talk about in the book, Michael, is just one thing. Just do one thing. You have an idea. Okay. Why don't we start with a name? Just pick a name. Okay. Then why don't we start with a domain name? Okay. Then why don't we do a logo? Okay. Then why don't we just do one step at a time? Just take one step at a time. If you believe you've got a good idea, take one step at a time.
Yeah. I agree with that approach. The other thing I think, Colin, is you take one step at a time, but you also make a how can I put this? You have to be very, very disciplined about what you do. And the number one thing you have to be disciplined to do as an entrepreneur is to realize you do not know everything now. You do not know everything, which means you have to sow into yourself. If you really want to have the wherewithal and the mental fortitude and the capability of pushing through fears and things like that and getting to the other side, you're going to have to go along and start training yourself. Training doesn't finish when you finish high school, college, whatever, university, yeah, or anything. That's the foundations maybe of your learning, okay? But then you're on the journey of life learning. You're going to be learning throughout the rest of your entrepreneurial career. To this day, I get up and the first thing I do is not look at my email, is not look at my numbers. The first thing I do is read a book, listen to a podcast, watch a video, as I'm doing, say, exercises and things like that, I input into me as the entrepreneur because my business will only go as far as I'm capable of going. And if I finished my learning, my life's learning when I was 22 years old, then what the heck's the last like 30 odd years been about? Right? You've got to be constantly inputting yourself. And the more you input into yourself, the more you'll be able to handle those fears, the more you'll be able to become emotionally resilient, the more you'll be able to actually deal with the issues. For instance, I had a major client in one of my businesses who was potentially leaving and say, we're not going to work with you any longer. And it was terrifying. It was really terrifying. You sort of think the stage the business was at and all that sort of stuff. And I sort of think, okay, so what have I got to do to get this back on track? And I end up pulling lessons from one book and one podcast and one video and one biography and all these sort of things are possible solutions. And I came with a solution. Now that client's locked in once again. Yeah, it's you mitigate if you don't develop your own knowledge and you're not developing yourself, then how do you think your business is going to develop? You'll become haphazard and stuff like that. So develop yourself, get involved in organizations, stuff like that. But anyway, Jeriel, we got you on stage. This is just awesome. It's fantastic to have you here. So, Jeriel, love to get your thoughts on this topic that you may have on facing your startup fears. Hopefully, you can
Yeah,
hear me there. Yeah, good.
yeah. Hey, Michael. Hey, Colin. Thank you guys so much for bringing me up on stage. I'm not in the startup phase anymore. I started my business like back in 2019, so it's been a few years now. But I do find that as I continue to grow in my business and try new things, that I do still face fears. Something that's really helped me is I'm rereading the book, The 12-Week Year. I read it every year in January. And something in the 12-week year that really stuck with me were they mentioned the 5 stages of emotional like cycles when you're going through a change, right? So whenever you're trying something new, you'll go from uninformed optimism to informed pessimism to valley of despair, informed optimism, and then success and fulfillment. And it's so great because I feel like I constantly see myself going through those phases every single time I try something new. And it's really helpful to know what's ahead because when you know what's ahead, it takes the fear away from it and it's not so scary. And you know that you'll get to the other side of it if you just stay consistent. So that's what I wanted to add. Thank you both so much.
Thank you for sharing that. That's it. Can you just do me a favor, Jeriel? Can you just go through those 5 stages once again, just slowly, because I thought they were really important. If you can just iterate them again.
Yeah, so the 5 stages are first, uninformed optimism. That's when you don't know what's ahead. You're super excited to get started, right? And then there's informed pessimism. So that's when you realize everything that it'll take, right, to start a business, start the new career, whatever the thing may be. And now you're feeling like, okay, how in the world am I ever going to get all of this done now that you have all the information? Then there's the valley of despair, right? Where you're feeling defeated and maybe like you want to quit and maybe like you won't get this done. You have no idea how you'll be able to accomplish your dreams. And then there's informed optimism. Maybe that's the part where you have the coach, you have the strategy, you have the plan, you see the light at the end of the tunnel, you see how you can get this done. And then the next piece is going to be success and fulfillment. So that's when you actually achieve the goal.
Yeah, they're great 5 stages. Colin, what are your thoughts on those 5 stages there?
Oh, I like it. I like it. And you know, the valley, we just call it the valley of death, no, the valley of what, despair? The valley of despair.
Yeah, valley of despair.
The valley of despair. Oh my gosh. So I had sort of interpreted the 5 steps a little differently because the way I go through them is I have this addictive behavior. So I register a domain name for a business idea. I'm so excited. Like I'm just bouncing off the wall. I'm so excited. I get a real quick hit. I register the domain name. Like I feel really good. Like my melatonin, whatever's blowing up in the brain. And then all of a sudden, 2 days later, I'm like, what the hell did I just do? And then when I start to research it, I realize this is not going to work, and then all of a sudden I say, you know, what am I doing? Like, this could work, and then I get back into it, and so I can see where you go into this idea where, you know, this sort of optimism start, and then you go into the valley of despair, and then you come out, and I love doing that with all my business ideas because probably only 1 in 10 ever make it to the other side of the valley of despair. I admit that, and that's okay. That's okay because we're not spending a lot of money by registering a domain, doing a logo. I'm working on a very big project right now. I was just thinking about that right now, actually. But we're not losing a lot by that. And sometimes we get through the valley of despair, sometimes we don't. But you know,
Well,
it equates more than just because originally when you first start with that idea, you got this energy, you got the excitement, you got this. It's like a drug, you know, or something. And you feel like you got all the momentum, and then reality sets in, and it's a lot harder than you realize to get through the other side.
yeah, I completely agree with you on that. The value of despair, yeah, that's definitely there. That's for sure. Is like trying to make that valley as short as possible is the goal of an entrepreneur. But there will be that value of despair, as you put it, Jariel, which is basically was informed pessimism. That's another good way of putting it. Boy, yeah, you suddenly realize, you know what, this is going to take a heck of a lot, and now I'm committed to it. So, boy, I've got to somehow work through this. It's a huge challenge. It's a huge challenge. But thank you for that. Really, it's funny when you both sort of say those sort of things. It forces me to causes me anyway to remember back to my own journey. I'm thinking, yeah, yeah, I remember that valley. Oh, I remember that other valley. Yeah, that was a long valley, that one. Oh, that's right. I got halfway across that valley and it died. And so forth. But it's just it's the nature of being an entrepreneur.
It
It,
is.
it really is.
All right,
And
Michael, it's been a great
yeah,
show. Really
it's
enjoyed
been
spending
great.
time with you. I have an
I had a
announcement.
ball. Yeah.
Tomorrow we have a phenomenal author who wrote Lean Startup, Lean Company at Rich Exit, and his name's Dr. Keenan Sahin. He's coming at 2 o'clock on the Start Scale Exit Repeat podcast and live show on Clubhouse. And he's coming on tomorrow to talk about the lean startup. So he's really going into this idea. And this guy, by the way, he started with $1,000 and sold for $1.54 billion. Okay. So that's what he sold his company for. And he's coming on our show tomorrow. He'll be here at 2 o'clock Eastern. It's Dr. Keenan Sahin. And I'm really looking forward to that. You've been listening to the
The
Serial
complete
Entrepreneur Secrets.
entrepreneur.
Well, it's really Serial Entrepreneur Secrets. Sorry, it's what I say. It's Start Scale Exit Repeat podcast with the Complete Entrepreneur Edition. And
Yeah.
we sort of like we go do this one, and we also do the main show, and we do that every Friday, 2 o'clock Eastern. We do this one every Thursday, 5 o'clock Eastern. And believe it or not, it's a live show, and really appreciate Jeriel, you coming on, and GK coming on, and just sharing with us your thoughts on this. We love to have people on this show. We love to have people contribute and the community come together and share their thoughts. You've been listening to this show, and we'll see you all next week. I think, Michael,
Next week,
I had
5
a
p.
suggestion.
That's right.
I had a suggestion for next week. I gave to Mimi, who's our editor at Startup.club, which I haven't already done. So just go to Startup.club and sign up to that email list. It's going to be incredible to email next week this, with the Startup Club, Startup Advantage. But we are talking about doing a show next week on your favorite book, open mic, your favorite book, and how that book can help you as an entrepreneur learn. And it's exactly, Jerry also already got her book, right? Pointed out. She's going to come in with a synopsis of that one. So if you got a favorite book that's helped you out as an entrepreneur or as a startup, please join us next week. Or if you're listening to this in podcast, feel free to just keep listening to the next episodes and give us a review if you like the show and you're on Apple Podcasts or any other podcast networks. Please feel free to give us a review. Thank you, Michael. We'll see you
That would be
next
great. Thanks a lot for
next week.
everyone. Take care. See you.